All right, here we are again, living through the technological uh, difficulties that we survive with when you're working from home. And on my screen here, you can see this Richard Smart, a good image of Richard Smart, and he's joining us by phone today. Richard, how are you this morning?
Hi, John. I'm great this morning. Thanks for having me. And this is, I guess, two non-techies trying to figure out the
Yeah,
marvels of technology and different versions of Skype. But
yeah,
it's great to be here, at least in audio.
yeah. Well, I'm gonna blame I'm not going to say it, but Ontario government, you had Skype for Business, which is probably protocol and within the act. So anyway, I appreciate you taking the time because obviously you've got a lot going on. We've been running a series of exclusive interviews throughout the week. We had Joe Adamo from Transat on a Monday, Andrew Dawson. Yesterday we had Andrew from Sunwing. Yesterday we had Frank Demarinis, CEO from Travel Brands on. Uh, we've been getting incredible response and interaction from the trade on this, as well as some from the consumer. And we've really got a handle on what the consumer is the anger that they've got going on. So it's quite remarkable. So, anyways, this really is for an agent travel industry forum for registrants for Ontario. We appreciate you taking the time with us, Richard. And I guess, Richard, just for clarity, Richard's the president and CEO of TICO, which is the Travel Industry Council of Ontario, the government regulated body that oversees the travel industry. It's funny, Rich. I keep looking at the picture of you, and I'm waiting for a nod of the head or something to acknowledge it. So it's not. It's strange that I got your image up there. Anyway, having said that, any comments that we'll see popping up during the interview, because of our situation here, Richards and the team's not really able to respond. So they're going to take a look at the comments and respond post-interview to some of the comments. And of course, consumers and agents are always obviously welcome to visit TICO.ca for updates on regulations and so on. So having got that out of the way, because I want to make sure that we do that, Richard, thanks very much for joining us this morning. I hope everything is going well from your mobile office. Thank you. So what is TICO doing currently to help the consumers, travel advisors, and registrants in general terms?
Yeah, thanks again, John. As you said, it's great to be here, and certainly I hope you and your family are healthy and safe, as well as all the listeners on the call today. I'm running out of, I think we're all running out of adjectives to describe this pandemic. I've heard unprecedented, I've heard unchartered, I've heard devastating, I've heard, the adjectives go on. It's traumatic for everyone, and I just really hope first and foremost that everyone's following the guidance of the various levels of government to stay home, stay safe, wash your hands, practice social distancing. It's so important. And clearly, with the end not really in sight, it looks like we're going to be in this for the long haul. So, in terms of what we're doing, the first thing is we're all trying to stay safe. TICO's been its resources have been working from home. We do have the modern technology through Microsoft Teams and believe it or not, Skype, even though it's not working for us today.
Skype for Business, just for that.
Yeah, we've refocused our resources. Our inboxes are full. Our phones are going off the hooks, and we understand that consumers and travel advisors and registrants in general are really challenged in this time frame, and we're doing our part to try to respond to those queries and questions, and we're feeling the anger and the angst as well. And it's so important, and what really amazes me with the travel community is the resilience and taking the high road and really trying to understand and be sympathetic to the needs of consumers out there. It's a scary time, and people are really unclear and they're looking for information.
Yeah.
So in addition to refocusing our resources and working from home, we're not doing inspections right now. We're not doing investigations. We're really trying to focus on the customer service and focusing on the greatest need, which is providing information, clarity, and of course, we're associated with, we're an independent authority, but we work very closely with the government, and we're keeping the government apprised of the severity of this situation constantly. I've had three calls with the Minister Lisa Thompson, the Minister of Government and Consumer Services, and I know she offers her same feelings towards the devastation that everyone is facing. So it really is all hands on deck right
now. Yeah. It's I can't even think of any words to describe it either. And I feel for the consumer. I as a traveling consumer as well, find myself in a situation that I never thought I would be in either, because I've actually got a trip booked with an airline to go away in the summer months, and trying to cancel that because I don't think it's going to happen. And for my own personal choices, I've got to take a step back from that. So I'm going down the process of trying to figure out what the refund policies like are for my flight, and for upgrade things that we did, and seat selection and so on. And it's very confusing. Now, the recent change or addendum, the limited time addendum that came into law, I guess, if I'm wrong with that term, then say it, but the addendum to the Travel Industry Act for Ontario that was introduced late on Monday evening had a fairly material impact for registrants and for consumers as well. Can you just explain in sort of high-level layman's terms what those changes mean? And let's start with the consumer and the benefit that they'll get, or the benefit they'll get from the changes as it relates to the future travel vouchers or travel credits.
Sure, I'd be happy to. And I should have said at the start as well, and I know we all would feel the same, that the work that's been done by our frontline healthcare workers in hospitals has really been the focus of the government, and for good reason. They are doing absolutely Herculean efforts out there to look after the sick and the affected. But what we've been doing is keeping the government apprised and looking for solutions, and still, by the way, are looking for solutions. But over the last couple of weeks, sometimes we fault the government for being slow to move. But really, over the last couple of weeks, we took a look at
most of the time.
Yeah.
Anyway, sorry.
We took a look at the regulations that are out there. And to answer your question, yes, we got the government to put priority to certain changes in the regulation that were passed in cabinet and communicated to registrants and consumers on Monday night. And we've been TICO's been adding its commentary and interpretation of those changes that we've been very much part of in working with the government towards those. So what do those mean to people? First of all, we're a consumer protection organization, and we were very concerned, particularly during this COVID-19 period, that as suppliers, airlines, cruise companies, registrants, tour operators were in a position that cash is very scarce right now. We know that people are not booking, and we know that in this supply chain, most of the monies that are collected by credit card or otherwise are being passed to the end supplier. So when consumers rightfully and naturally are looking for refunds, that clearly isn't a simple task for most registrants to do, or suppliers. So this concept of future travel credits or vouchers has been out there during this crisis. But one of the issues that we had with the legislation as it was prior to Monday was that those vouchers weren't really worth anything if the supplier was to fail down the road. So exactly. we made changes, and whether or not a consumer has redeemed a voucher for future travel service or has an unredeemed voucher or coupon for future travel, if the registrant's issued that voucher and there's a failure down the road, God forbid that happens, but it's a distinct possibility. We wanted consumers to feel comfortable that those vouchers have value and would be eligible for a claim against the Industry Financed Compensation Fund that TICO manages.
Yeah.
By the way, that's now, next month, next quarter. This exemption that we put in place in the legislation is right through to April 1st, 2021. God forbid this COVID-19 goes on that long. And so even if somebody receives a voucher next Christmas or early in the new year, that voucher will still be valid, and the travel can even take place a year later. In fact, right through to April 1st, 2022. Yeah. So we have this two year period that the government and TICO is saying, under the circumstances, under this crisis, that is a reasonable form of compensation, reimbursement, whatever you want to call it, to a consumer. Yeah. And so we think that's an important message to send. It's now law, if you want to be as black and white as that. Mm-hmm. It's consistent with what the airlines and the Canadian Transportation Agency is saying, and we hope that'll go a long way, for various other parties, credit card companies and insurance companies, to consider that voucher being a true form of compensation.
And I think it's just worth mentioning at this point that we've seen some comments from users on various forums where they're complaining because the cost of their vacation, if they're trying to rebook it now, is up $1,000 or and so on. And after doing a little bit of research, what we've discovered is that some consumers are, in their mind, I think, interpreting the future travel voucher as a replacement trip for exactly what they've purchased. And as just a point of clarity, that future travel voucher is a credit that you can use and apply to virtually, from my understanding, and if I'm wrong, I'm sure I'll find out, you can use towards the purchase of a vacation. In one instance was a consumer who was enraged that the price of the vacation they were trying to rebook with their future travel voucher was $1,000 more, but the original trip they had booked was in mid-January, and they had booked it like 3 weeks or a month in advance, so they're getting crazy-ass last-minute pricing. But the new trip they tried to book, they're booking it now for a peak travel date somewhere down the line, so of course it's more expensive. So I just want to clarify that. And policies may be different at different tour operators and how they're using it, but that's the general foundation of a future travel voucher. Now, what would happen if, in the event, from a consumer protection perspective, if the future travel voucher addendum to the Act had not been imposed with what the situation that we're in now?
Yeah, well, this was the problem that we identified. I mean, I think most of your listeners know that the regulations haven't been updated for some time. And in fact, with the Ontario government, TICO had been working towards doing a full modernization, A to Z, of the regulation. And we were quite close to making some announcements and some further consultation on that. And we were looking at making wholesale changes to the legislation. And who knows, that may still come once we get through this crisis. Yeah. But without the amendments that we made on Monday evening, or the government announced on Monday evening, there was the risk that these vouchers, so consumers might have already redeemed a voucher for future travel service that had previously been issued, or they might have been issued a voucher as a result of this crisis, and those vouchers they typically have zero cash value. It says right on there, and there was the risk that if there was a failure to provide those services in the future, that they would have been worthless. So this, you asked earlier what the impact was to travel advisors. We think that this arms the professional travel advisor when they're discussing future travel with their consumer. Yes. With this voucher, that there's the comfort of knowing that if something was to go wrong, if there was a failure down the road, that now the consumers have the protection of making the claim against TICO's compensation fund. So it's that added security and comfort that the advisor now can have the discussion with their customers. Yeah. which was very unclear before the amendments made on Monday.
And you know what I think, Richard, it also would be helpful, because I don't know, or I don't believe that the average consumer walking down the street understands that. First of all, there are two elements really. One is trust accounting, and how those funds are handled once they pay for their vacation. And then in addition to that is how the Consumer Protection Fund, which is what these future travel vouchers would rely upon in the event of a failure, that a portion or all of, depending on the size of the failure, of their future travel voucher would be redeemed. I don't think they understand those two elements. So one, if you could just talk about trust accounting and what happens to John Kirk's money if I pay for a vacation package through Go Away Travel. My vacation is not for 5 months from now. Just explain what happens to those funds.
Sure. I mean, at the very foundation or cornerstone of the consumer protection legislation that's been in place since 1997, and in fact, it even went back, I believe, to 1974, is this provision called trust accounting. It sounds ominous, but really what it is, it's an obligation that every registered travel agency or tour operator in the province of Ontario, and by the way, Quebec has something similar, as does BC, and any monies that are collected through an agency from a customer, those monies are held in a separate, segregated bank account. We call it a trust bank account, and those monies can only be used to pay for the travel services that they were intended for, and it needs to be customer by customer. So if Mary pays it through the agency into the trust account, Mary's funds can't be used to pay for Peter's trip. So there's a very regimented process around trust accounting that has been well ingrained into agencies and operators over the years. Now, what happens is with the evolution of advance purchases and supplier prepayments, is cruise companies and airlines demand their monies way in advance of the travel happening. So those monies, and that's okay. I mean, the monies can move from the trust account to the travel supplier. But this is what's created the problem today for a vast number of agencies and operators, is the monies have been passed on to the end suppliers. TICO doesn't regulate airlines or cruise companies or hotels. And really the only way we can, we're here for the consumer, but we also want to see a strong and vibrant industry. And the only solution we could see in the short term during this crisis was to make a clear statement that a voucher is an acceptable form of reimbursement to a consumer. Because, I mean, if the agencies had the money, I think Frank said it yesterday, they would refund the customer. And in fact, after COVID-19 passes, hopefully sooner than later, we'll revert back to the methodology, to the provisions within the legislation that a refund is a distinct is an option to a registrant if the money is there.
Now, from how that fund or that pool of money that's in the bank is set aside to protect the consumer in the event of failures, the funding of that, I think it would be good to hear from you for our viewers and listeners to get an understanding of how that actually works.
Yeah, well, there's sort of two general models. The agency or the operator, I don't want to go too technical, but if they're considered to be the merchant of record, those monies are sitting in trust accounts of our registrants, of the agencies and tour operators. There's other models in there where the credit, 90% of the transactions are done by credit card, and those monies can flow directly through to the end supplier.
Hey, Richard, I was referring to the comp fund and how that's funded.
So we do manage a compensation fund at TICO. It's approximately $25 million.
Okay.
Those monies are available to when there's a failure of a TICO registered travel agency or tour operator or airline or cruise line, and consumers who have made their purchase through the TICO registrant can make an eligible claim against that compensation fund if there's a failure.
Yeah.
And this is a concern right now.
Yeah.
It's speculation, but this pandemic is so overwhelming to so many, including the airlines, cruise lines, and hotels, that failure is a distinct possibility. So the compensation fund is there. This is why our general mantra is we want consumers always to book through TICO registered travel agencies or tour operators, because they have the protection of the fund and it's available to them. And our digital marketing campaign pushes consumers, or probably strongly advises consumers to always use a travel advisor and a TICO registrant. And it doesn't cost them anything to do it right now.
Yeah.
It's so they're foregoing their consumer protection if they're to go direct to the hotel or direct to the airline. So if a consumer wants to benefit from that compensation fund, which we manage, then they must book through a registered TICO travel agency.
And then, notwithstanding that, the sheer benefits of having a professional, knowledgeable travel advisor who can walk you through your decision-making process. And then in the event of a crisis, because we've seen it time and time again where a failure may happen with an airline, or mass cancellations, or hurricanes and different things that happen, you have a travel advisor to pick up the phone and help you through it. So, and they've been working, relentlessly to make sure they can accommodate their customers. We're talking over, the numbers varies from who you talk to, but all in, you're talking 20,000+ travel advisors across the country who are all doing their best to help their consumers out right now. So hats off to them, because they're not making any money right now, right?
We've certified over 75,000 travel advisors in the province of Ontario alone in the last 10 years.
Yeah.
And I can't tell you how often the best ambassadors of consumer protection, I think in Canada, but certainly in Ontario, are travel advisors. Yeah. And they are I recognize they're working for free right now.
Yeah.
And we've shared that situation with the government, with the minister.
Yeah.
And although we made some announcements around the reg changes on Monday, we're not stopping there. We're having continuous dialogue to see what else we can do. There's no guarantees. I mean, we don't write the legislation. That's the government.
Yeah.
But we certainly have strong influence and strong input into the government.
Are you talking
daily calls?
Are you talking about some form of relief, or finding that sector as a essential service or something like that? Is that what you're hinting at? Is that what those discussions are about? Or
well, it's we've had some input around what our views are on essential services, and I think that's evolving. I've already seen more news today and heard that the Ontario government is revisiting that essential business list. So we'll see what comes out. I have a feeling there'll be less on the list than more.
Mm-hmm.
But it's more around the other burden relief, whether that's financial relief or administrative relief. We're having discussions with the government. When I say daily, I mean sometimes hourly.
Yeah.
That's going on, and I'm optimistic. It's the final decision is with cabinet and the minister.
Yeah.
But I know that they understand the gravity of the situation, and they want to do good. By all the industries that are being impacted, but I think the travel industry is feeling the pain.
It's crazy.
More so than some of the others.
So a couple more quick questions. I'm just curious about anything else coming down the pipe that you could share with us as it relates to those suggested regulatory changes. I've only got a couple of minutes. We're trying to stay within a specific timeline. So if you could just maybe touch on that, or if there's nothing, just say there's nothing I can talk about as well. So what do you think?
Yeah, nothing specific. But right. You have your listeners have my assurance that we are looking at the financial burdens. We know there's no cash coming in the door.
Yeah.
In fact, there's more cash going out the door. we're very cognizant of the massive layoffs the industry has experienced, and we're doing everything we can to try to lessen that burden. So I can't give you specifics right now, but your listeners can be assured that we're looking at it seriously.
It'll be interesting to see, and I'm not how the changes would impact from a regulatory perspective. But after the 2008 crash in the United States, the home-based agency network and environment in the U.S., there was probably about 30% or so agents that were home-based. And post-2008, that changed dramatically and escalated up to it's close to 70+% now of agents that are based in the United States are all home-based. I'm curious if you don't have to give an opinion on that because I know it's not your role, but I just wonder if there is a material shift from agents that are all working from home now, if that would have any kind of an impact on registrants, how they're set up, and some of the regulatory statutes that are around being an agent in Ontario, and if you're home-based, does that make any kind of a difference?
Yeah, well, we're agnostic to the type of business models that are used out there, but I can say in my 5 years plus at the helm, we've seen an explosive growth of the home-based agency model. I think it offers a great solution, for those independent contractors that want to work under that type of model. But the more traditional model that's leveraging technology and applying kind of a hybrid version of both home based and bricks and mortar is still alive and doing well, but it's becoming more and more challenging. But TICO's agnostic to whether which model is used. We just want to ensure that the consumer has the same protection at the end, regardless.
So, lastly, everybody's experiencing several cost-cutting initiatives. We've seen massive layoffs with everybody. I don't even have to name any brand because everybody's experienced it and they're doing it. What's TICO done to reduce your cost structure and your cost base during these times?
Yeah, that's a great question. We, a few weeks ago, or maybe a month ago, we thought we had our budget for next year sort of all locked away and ready to go. Our board of directors has been meeting on an emergency basis several times over the last few weeks. We've basically thrown that budget out with the bathwater and starting again. And we're looking at a major austerity program. So we're not hiring. There were some opportunities that we identified with some of the changes we were anticipating, but that's all been put aside. We are curtailing all discretionary expenditures. We're working from home. We're trying to accelerate our move from paperless to a digital environment. All discretionary expenditures, I've asked my staff to pull back on and look for every idea to action to cut back on costs. And so we're looking at major reductions to what we thought we were budgeting, but also to what we were spending most recently. So we have to share in the solution and share in the pain. But I think long term, both the industry and TICO are a resilient and passionate bunch. We'll get through this, and we'll recalibrate and be better, for it. I think, from the learning experience and what we take away from it.
I sure as hell hope so, because we better learn something from this, because it's exhausting and it's taxing. So, Richard Smart, thank you very much, President and CEO from TICO, the Travel Industry Council of Ontario. We really appreciate you taking the time with us today to talk to our viewers and just providing some clarity and maybe just offering up some opinions on some certain things that may be helpful for all of our viewers and our listeners. So appreciate your time. Thanks very much. You got a busy day, I'm sure. You can't see right now, but I'm waving goodbye, and I'll let you go, Richard. Thanks very much. See you later.
Thanks, John. Stay safe, and same to all your viewers and listeners.
Will do. Thanks very much.
Bye
and
for now.
Thank you, everybody, for watching this afternoon. We're going to be developing a new Facebook group page that we invite you to join, where we can take industry-specific videos and interviews such as these and have them roll exclusively within that group. So please take a look for that. Thanks very much for your continued support. We've got a couple of great interviews set up next week. One, we've got an editor-in-chief roundtable with some very senior executives from the retail space, covering off storefront, online, host agency, consortium. We'll have 4 or 5 people on the screen for a debate and discussion points that are certainly going to be impactful for all of you and for all of those within the trade across Canada. Thanks very much for your continued support. Please like our Facebook page. If you don't already, subscribe to our newsletter. We're distributing content and information that's relevant every day. We appreciate your support. Thanks very much, and have a good afternoon. Thank you. See you later. Now I'm going to go to the home studio and finish. A finish.